Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to a brand new episode of BosBabes. I'm your host, Brittany Baldi, and I could not be more thrilled today. With me is a very special guest, Judith Hoag. And if you guys don't know who she is, you clearly are living under a rock. This woman is a producer, an actress, and she is very well known for a number of TV shows, movies, and of course, the original April O'Neil, which is why I'm rocking my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sweatshirt as we speak. I love it. I just wanted to congratulate you, Judith. You literally just eloped 2 weeks ago on Valentine's Day weekend. What was that whole experience like? And I know you had like a snowed-in honeymoon.
Yeah. So my then fiance, now husband, is in Los Angeles, and he's working on a show there called The Morning Show for Apple TV. And we got engaged on Christmas morning, and we decided, because it's so crazy with COVID, we were going to go ahead and get married and then maybe have like a second wedding or a party, when the world opens back up. But we weren't going to wait around. We've been together for a pretty long time. And so we decided that we were going to do it on Valentine's Day weekend. And I thought, maybe Valentine's Day, but I'm a little odd. I'm somebody who has, for my whole life, I've been a gardener. And so I often consult the Farmer's Almanac. And what they have is they have the most auspicious days for things. And they tell you when to cut your hair to slow your growth of the hair, or when to cut for long hair. And I've tried it and it actually works. So Valentine's Day was not an auspicious day to get married, but the day before was. And I thought, well, even better. And so we chose that day. He came in, we had we thought maybe we'd get married on our front porch, which we have a lovely home out in the woods. It was freezing cold. A storm was on its way. Got married, went out to dinner with our two witnesses, had a fabulous night. And by the next day, the storm had started and we were completely snowed in. And it was actually really lovely because he got to stay an extra week. We have a very, very long driveway, and there was no getting in, there was no getting out. And so it was like the most romantic. So that is my very long answer. And it's a pretty cool thing. So I thought I'd never get married again, but here I am, married again.
It sounds like a blessing that you guys were able to have that snowstorm, because it allowed your husband to stay with you an extra week. And again, I just wanted to congratulate you on eloping. Happened to be on Valentine's Day weekend, which is super cool. And I wanted to jump right into the fact that you grew up in both New York and Massachusetts. I know I already told you that I actually grew up in Massachusetts myself. I'm currently in Amesbury as we speak, which is literally 10 minutes from Newburyport. And I think it's super cool that you had identical brothers. They were twins, of course. And I wanted to ask you, what was your favorite part about having two brothers? Of course, they were twins. And I understand that you guys used to throw knives at each other. What the heck was that all about?
Yeah, we were. So my brothers, the way that they beat the crap out of each other. And I was always a very spunky sister, and I would mix it up with them all the time. And they would mix it up. They're almost 3 years older than I am. And so I wanted to keep up with everything that they did. So if it meant, climbing trees or jumping in holes or jumping in off of whatever, or I would do whatever they were doing. So they were always really physical with each other, and somebody was always throwing a punch, and it landed on me a lot of times. That, I don't know if you've ever heard of a dead arm, when somebody punches you on your bone. Well, we would just, I was like the third brother that way, except that I was really good at crying on the spot. And that was sort of my only defense, to get them in trouble or to stop. But, we were just kind of crazy. And I think that there were times we dare each other to do stuff. And so, we were in the kitchen one time and the knives were out. It was like trying to throw knives, at each other it's like throw it between my legs, throw it over my shoulder. Nobody was injured, but my mother was not amused. at all. She came in and found us.
It almost sounds like your brothers kind of got you a little bit ready for your role of April O'Neil. Flash forward, you with like the weapons and like the karate moves, and you guys kind of wrestling each other. I think that's super amazing.
Yeah, I was definitely, I mean, I liked girl things. I wasn't a girly girl, and I wasn't a straight up tomboy. I was like a hybrid. I liked them both.
Hybrid is perfect. And growing up in Newburyport, girl, you must have went to the beaches. So I wanted to ask you, what was your favorite part about growing up in Newburyport, and what were some of your food spots that you enjoyed eating at with your family?
Well, I mean, we didn't move to Newburyport. We lived in Ossining, New York, and we didn't move there until I was in the 7th grade. And so it was really awkward because it's like you're right in the middle of middle school. My brothers were, I think they were freshmen. We felt like coming from New York to Newburyport, it definitely felt like we had somehow time traveled back in time. And so it was a little odd. It took a little while for us to like find our groove. Like, oh, you're from New York. Well, they'd say, you're from New York. You know. And I remember it took a while to like find my people and my brothers to find their people. But once we did, it really became home. And I definitely identify with Newburyport more than New York as being home. Although I ended up moving back to New York when I was, I think, 22. I moved to Manhattan. And my favorite places to eat, well, one was Fowl's Restaurant on State Street, which my mom, that was her restaurant. And she and my stepfather, Raw, they ran it. And it was kind of like the nerve center for breakfast and gossip and crazy. And so we ate there a lot. But 10 Center Street was one of my favorite places. Michael's Harborside, Starboard Galley, the Grog. Some of them are still there. Some of them aren't. We were big lobster heads. Love a good lobster roll. So anything seafood, like my ultimate meal would be start off with some steamers and then eat, 2.5 pound lobsters back to back, and I'd be good.
I literally love that answer. It sounds like you're kind of like a New England girl at heart, mixed with a little bit of New York, which is kind of an interesting combo over there. Super amazing, again, that you grew up with two brothers. They obviously were twins. Having spent time in both New York and Massachusetts, I absolutely love that because, again, I grew up in the Northeast myself. I love this funny travel story. So I want you to talk about one time you and your grandmother, or it sounds like some of your family members, went rafting down a river, and your grandmother like lost her wig in the rapids. What was that situation like?
Well, we had my grandparents, who are not with us anymore, were hilariously funny people. And my grandmother wore wigs. And it was sort of like mom and her wigs, something always happened with her wigs. I remember one time driving and the car got on a highway somewhere. We had car trouble and, a state trooper came to assist us. It was a windy day. My grandmother stuck her head out the door and off came the wig. She put the wig back on, but she had this long conversation with the state trooper. She turned and looked at my mom and the wig was on sideways with the label like hanging down her face. So she always wore a wig. It's like, Mom, are you sure you want to wear a wig while we're river rafting? And she really wanted to do it. And then we all got caught in the rapids and she lost her wig. And, when you wear wigs a lot, it's like Moira Rose, in Schitt's Creek. Like her wigs have names. They have identities. It's part of who you are. What do we think Moira Rose's hair looked like under that wig? It gets a little sprouty because I don't think it gets a lot of natural daylight or air except at night. So it was, a family legend after a while of Mom and like making sure her wig was on right. It was like, Mom, how's your wig? Are we good? We're heading outside into the wind. Is the wig on? Everybody wig check. And so we would tease her a lot.
It almost sounds like these wigs kind of have like a life of their own, but I love how you have these fond memories of the wigs with your family members. And I just had to ask that because I feel like every great actress, professional athlete, authors, you guys all have these interesting stories. So I needed to ask you, what was a funny travel story? Well, and I understand that you enjoyed watching Olympics as a kid. You guys are now listening to Brittany Baldi. I'm the host of the BosBabes Lifestyle Sports Podcast. This is not your typical sports show, of course. Today we have Judith Hoag. She is an actress, producer, and very, very, very well known as the original April O'Neil in the early 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I cannot wait to get into her acting career. I cannot wait to touch upon all of that. But I wanted to ask you about gymnastics and figure skating. You were a big fan of both Dorothy Hamill, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if I'm going to say her last name correctly, Nadia Comaneci.
Nadia Comaneci.
Comaneci.
Dominated the, I don't know, man, it was like the 1976 Olympics or 72 Olympics, or I mean, I'm that old. I did gymnastics. We were not a sports family. My dad was a very cerebral. He, went to Harvard. He was an English major. He was not a guy who was playing ball with his kids. My brothers were musicians, and we were all sort of, I was into drama, and I was just kind of a crazy kid. And I mean, the one time my dad played ball with my brother, the one and only time he threw a softball, it smashed my brother in the face and broke his nose. So it was
my gosh, it didn't end well.
We thought it was hilarious until we realized his nose was broken. We were okay with blood. There was, young boys and girls, if they're back in the old days, kids were allowed to, take off on their bikes and play and get lost. And you came home when the street lights came on. So, there were a lot of injuries that happened. So a little blood didn't throw us too much. But so there wasn't a lot of sports in my house, but the Olympics were a huge deal. And I love gymnastics. And so I got into gymnastics, and I was on a gymnastics team. Not very good. My two events were vaulting and floor exercise. And I was really tall. I'm 5'7", and I was probably almost 5'7" in the 7th grade. So I was really tall, and for that age particularly. And, the best gymnasts are these little beans. They're these little tiny girls that are, 5 feet tall, 4'6". I love gymnastics because, watching it on the Olympics, I think anybody who watches the Olympics, whatever your favorite sport is, after you're done watching, the 2 weeks of it, you want to go and attack that sport. So I definitely did that with gymnastics. Ice skating, I just love to ice skate. And at the time, Dorothy Hamill was just, she dominated the Olympics. But it's funny because ice skating is an analogy that I've used later on in my career when, especially when I was starting out, and you would be in situations where when I was auditioning a lot, or I was still auditioning. I don't have to audition quite as much anymore, which is nice. But it was always like everybody was an Olympic skater, and it was really who had the nerves to land the jumps. And so when, say, you're going in to meet a director for a big movie, and, there's a lot of people in the room, there were a lot of people out in the waiting room. It's, it can get very stressful if you don't have your game on. And I always felt like ice skating was an analogy that just worked for me. It was just like, focus on skating your program. Just have fun, do your program, don't worry about it. And so those were my two sports. And I still I never watch a lot of TV anymore, but if the Olympics are on, I'm watching skating, I'm watching gymnastics, I'm watching swimming. I love downhill. I mean, most events I like.
The Olympics inspired you when you were younger. And although it sounds like you didn't really care too much for sports, especially your family, you guys had other awesome things going on in your life. It sounds like that competitive edge obviously took into place with your acting career. So we're going to hop right into that. You are a complete ham bone, as you say, which I think is super cute. And you loved Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, and Mary Tyler Moore. Those are your idols when you were younger. I wanted to ask you, at what age did you realize that you wanted to be an actress? I know it must have came very young, because in the 5th grade, you played Benjamin Franklin and you sang your heart out in the school musical called Ben and Me. And you actually said that was a role of a lifetime. So let's talk about your early years as an actress. Like, what the heck sparked your interest in wanting to become an actress?
Well, there were a couple things. I was very dramatic about everything. I lived life very dramatically. And I had a couple things that really kind of pushed me in that direction, or encouraged me into that direction. I was really lucky in that my family, because everybody was, artistic or cerebral or whatever, it wasn't an odd thing. I had a music teacher in elementary school named Mr. J. And I loved him. I'm still Facebook friends with him. If he walked into this room, I'd probably, cry and be so happy. And that was back when I lived in Austin, New York. And he would choose shows and like put me in the lead roles. And I think he would do it for me because, when you're doing a school play, if you've got one ham bone there who actually can handle the role, like, it's going to help the play. And I was just game. He had adapted the play from a book and turned it into a musical. And I loved that. And it was so much fun. And I remember just feeling like, I want to do this. I really, really want to do this. And there was a woman who came to one of the shows who used to direct the musicals at the high school. And I used to sit and watch all their rehearsals because my friend's brother was a musician and played in the orchestra. And so I got to watch all their dress rehearsals right before they opened. And I remember thinking, sitting in the dark in a theater, watching people up on stage. And it was just like, I want to do that. I had no nerves, no anxiety, and no disbelief that I couldn't do it, which I think is really helpful. It's naive, but really, really helpful because you don't consider that you could very probably fail at this. Those thoughts come later. But that, and my parents used to take us, when we lived in New York, they used to take us to see Broadway shows a lot. And I remember the very first one we ever went to see, it was Jesus Christ Superstar. It was way back in the early 70s. It was, Andrew Lloyd Webber, huge show, really loud, really exciting. I remember the music was so loud. It was like a little scary, but thrilling. And my mom leaned over to me. She just saw how I was just like, and she said, "Would you like to be up there one day?" And I said, like, I probably couldn't even talk. And she was like, you can do that. And so then it was kind of like everyone in my family just knew that that's what I was going to do and that there wasn't going to be a question. And, for anybody who's starting out, like, try to hone that belief because you're going to need it. Because especially if you go into, really, it's sports, entertainment, music, literature, pretty much anything. I mean, having a really strong belief in yourself and in what you can do is what will help you as you're climbing the rungs of success.
That is some excellent advice for you guys that are now listening to the podcast. Judith just gave you guys some great advice, whether you're going to be a pro athlete, a future actor, actress, if you want to write your own book someday, just literally believe in yourself and follow those steps and follow your intuition. It sounds like your mom sounds like she was an incredible woman where she let you basically just live your dream and just be you, essentially. She wasn't trying to make you become a doctor or make you become a lawyer or make you be hard with the books. She was like, Judith, like, you have a skill, you have a talent. That's going to be you someday up there on that stage. I love that you brought up the fact that your parents used to take you and your brothers to the Broadway musicals and the shows. And I actually looked on your website. Obviously, I did my research. I think it's pretty amazing that in Newburyport, you joined the Theater of Newburyport and you became the youngest founding member. So I wanted to ask you, how did acting alongside such older actors influence your career later in life? Because it sounds like you were acting with people that were like a decade older than you when you were younger.
Yeah. Well, it did, I think having brothers that threw knives at you and, that would give you, dead arms. I wasn't intimidated by it at all. There might have been moments, but mostly, by the time I started doing theater in Newburyport, I was probably about 14. And then I went off to a performing arts high school called Walnut Hills School of the Arts because I really needed to be in that environment. I went to Newburyport High and I did not do well because I never would go to school. I was a super truant kid because instead of going to school, I'd go and work at the theater. And everybody was really, I think, because I was around older people, I was the kind of kid who kind of came out a little bit like an adult. Like I got more comfortable with myself as I got older because I just had a different sensibility. I liked different things. I just was kind of a little freak kid, not in a bad way. I just loved being around adults. I loved the conversations that I had with them a little bit more than with my own peer group because we just weren't interested in the same things. The Theater of Newburyport, it was so much fun and they really embraced me and I'm still friends. I don't really see everybody as much, but it was just an amazing opportunity. Oh, who is part of the Theater of Newburyport, who has stayed a really good friend, is Tom Bergeron, who up until recently was, the host of Dancing with the Stars. And he did America's Funniest Videos. And he's just done so much. And it's such a great guy. And we've stayed friends. But it was a great training ground. And between that and going to Walnut Hill, and then when I graduated, kind of just hopping into New York and starting, I was just, boom, ready to go.
It sounds like you were definitely ready to go, especially working alongside actors that were, sounds like, again, 5-10 years older than you, but you obviously resonated with them. You sound like you didn't really fit in with peers and you weren't really into going to school. It's like your soul just knew that your path was going to be producing, becoming an actress, and just being creative. And I think it's awesome that you followed that path. And here you are now, very successful, literally producing your own content, worked on a number of projects, both in film, TV. I know you're coming out with a documentary. I cannot wait to speak about that shortly. I wanted to also ask you, what was your experience like? Obviously, you talked about the Theater of Newburyport, but you also spent some time training and acting in Boston as well as New York. So can you give us some backstory on which maybe you liked a little bit better? What skills did you develop in both states?
Well, when I was in Boston, I was doing theater. I took some classes at ACT, which is American Conservatory Theater. It's been so long. They have a theater on Brattle Street. It's part of Harvard. It was when I got to New York and I started studying there. Really, I got to New York and I was really fortunate. I got into the business really quickly. My very first job was on a soap opera, which we have quite an alumni. God bless him. Luke Perry played my brother. Sadly, he's not with us anymore. But Bryan Cranston was on our show, Terry Polo. Who else? There's a whole list of people who did. It was called Loving. And it was a great place to start learning how to I had only done theater, so here I was doing television for the first time. And so I studied in New York, but I think the person that I studied with in Los Angeles, a woman named Diana Castle, really helped me a lot. She actually helped me unlearn everything that I had learned, which is good because she helped me get a whole lot deeper in my work. And I went, I spent several years in New York and then moved to Los Angeles and then lived there for 30 years. And now I go back and forth between Los Angeles and Nashville. And being in Nashville has been super fun for me because I'm moving into producing. And, as soon as my partner, can wrap up his job there, we're going to keep moving forward on our projects here. So it's been quite a journey, but it's been so much fun. And now I'm at a point where I really do want to spend a little more time producing a documentary that I am slowly but surely working on. It's pretty hard to start a project during lockdown when you really do need to be face to face with people. And so, and we're pretty much a little shoestring budget here. So for the people who don't know, I'm doing, NECA Toy Company is making an action figure of my character, April O'Neil, because I was in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie. And I asked them if they would be cool with me maybe documenting the process. And I thought that they would kind of laugh and go, oh, okay, another one wants to document the process. But I'm the only actor who's ever asked to do that. And so they've pretty much opened the doors to me. And I really have to get moving on it because I'm hoping that life will be opening up. The two places that I need to be the most are in Los Angeles and New York. And those are the two places that are most closed down right now. So it's kind of hard to get in there. Unless you're with a big production, they'll open the doors to bigger productions, but smaller ones are a little more challenging. So that's what's going on that front.
For those of you guys that are listening, I am so excited to announce, as Judith just announced, she is in the pre-production right now for a documentary called The Making of April O'Neil. I cannot wait to see how that comes out. You are obviously going to be producing it, and that should be hopefully getting started shortly. I want to talk a little bit about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Obviously, I know you need to go soon, but this past November in 2020 was the 30th anniversary of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It came out in the early 90s. For those of you guys that don't know who the TMNT are, it's a fictional quartet of superhero Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. These turtles were trained in Japanese martial arts by their rat sensei, Splinter. The turtles live in sewers in New York City. They attempt to remain hidden from society while keeping the streets safe, battling crime and evil. The turtles, named after Italian Renaissance artists Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael, and Donatello, and lots of cartoons, comic books, and films have been made based off of the TMNT characters. And April O'Neil, she is literally the original April O'Neil. So we need to hear all about April O'Neil. If you guys don't know who April O'Neil is, she was, or the character is, a New York news reporter, and she works alongside the Turtles, helping sort of battle the evil. So April, can I refer to you as April?
Yes.
I love it. So Casey Jones was supposed to be your love interest. I always wanted you to fall in love with Mikey. But what was it like being April O'Neil, and how did you get selected for such an awesome role? What was that audition process like?
Well, I read for the part with Steve Barron, who is the director, and I was doing another movie at the time, and so it didn't look like I was going to be able to do it. But they managed to make. I was very lucky. For a while, the movie went away. Which I was sad about because I thought it would just be so much fun to do. But then the producers of the movie that I was working on and everybody worked together. So I was able to do it. We had no idea at the time that it was going to be the hit that it was. So it's astonishing. I knew nothing about it. I didn't know there was a cartoon. I didn't know that there was a comic book. I had never heard of it. Once we went into pre-production, I started to learn a little bit about it, but I just kind of jumped in. I wasn't going to be committed to any comic book version. I honestly didn't know that there was a cartoon at the time, even when we shot it. It was so much fun. I just jumped in with both feet and had a blast. It was really challenging because we shot 6 days a week and we had a first unit and a second unit shooting simultaneously. So I'd go from first unit all day long and then go into second unit. So there were some days that were like 17-hour, 18-hour days, I think was the longest day. At that time, I wasn't really used to that, especially since it was 6 days a week. So by the time it was done, we were all pretty burnt out and hopeful that maybe we had made a good movie. And it turns out we did, and we broke a lot of records. You know, I'm amazed 30 years later. I put together a cast and crew reunion. It's on YouTube. It's not on my channel. It's on a channel that I helped start. If you want to go and check that out, I do have a bunch of stuff on my channel, some other interviews with people from the show or from the movie. But it's pretty amazing that 30 years later we're still talking about it. People are, you know, it's a franchise that's done really well. I mean, it's got the Nickelodeon series on now. Seth Rogen is doing a whole new cartoon version. I believe it's cartoon. Michael Bay has done, you know, 2 Ninja Turtle movies. And so it's the franchise that just keeps going. It's like the Energizer Bunny.
I can agree with that statement. I feel like the Ninja Turtles have been transcending time. I just turned 32, so I grew up watching the Ninja Turtles, and my brother, he's such a big fan of the whole series. He literally has a full Ninja Turtle tattoo on him. He has all the posters. He has like the life size dolls in his house, and he's 30 himself. So he's like, I cannot wait for you to do this interview with Judith. I can't wait to watch it. But I wanted to ask you, did you have any top memories on set? And a big thing that I really was interested in, did you actually have to get any karate training while being on set? Because obviously with the TMNT movies, a big part about the film is karate, mindfulness, the importance of meditation when you're obviously striking and beating the bad guys on the streets of New York. And I feel like Master Splinter was all about like that mindfulness. So did you have any karate training on set? And what were some of your top memories being on set?
Well, my top memories were just being with the guys, and they were so much fun. And it was Leif Tilden, Josh Peiss, Michelin Sisti, and David Foreman, and Kevin Clash, who played Splinter. And it was just so much fun being with them and the puppeteers and Jim Henson's Creature Shop. So just, you know, life on a set is really dynamic. It's really fun. There's so many personalities. You end up just hanging out a whole lot more than you end up actually shooting anything. Just hurry up and wait. I had no training at all. That was exclusively the stuntmen who were brought in from China, because it was Golden Harvest, and Golden Harvest was the production company. And they had done all the Bruce Lee movies. So there were a ton of people who came in. It was all stuntmen, for the most part, who did stuff. Some of our turtles did some of the stuff, but mostly they just had real stuntmen doing it. And I didn't really do that much. I did all the stuff that I did, but it wasn't difficult at all. And I had kind of wished that it had been more. That was actually, you know, the mindfulness is was part of Master Splinter, and he was like, you know, their sensei. And it was one of the things that I really loved about the script. And I had a little disagreement with one of the producers from Golden Harvest, who thought it was kind of the fluff of the movie. And I thought it was really the heart of the movie. And he said, no, everybody just wants to watch kids fighting, or just wants to watch, you know, the fighting. And I thought, I think you might be missing part of your audience. But, you know, back in those days, you know, a woman with a point of view was not always welcomed. So, which is a little bit of an indicator about why I didn't continue with the series, which was their choice, which is fine. But it was, I think, a really important part of it. I mean, anybody who does martial arts, it's not just martial arts, it's a whole way of being. And that was such an important part. And I felt that that was also a really good balance point for the martial arts, because it wasn't just about beating people up. It was, you know, controlling your anger and using your ability for very positive reasons, and towards very positive ends. And I thought that those messages were really good messages. And what I'm learning now in talking to fans and people who really love Ninja Turtles, and it's something that I'm going to be, focusing on in the documentary, is that, there's a code of ethics and a way of being that the Turtles lived by, that honestly, if we were all living by those codes of ethics now, which was, do no harm, care about your fellow man or woman or person, be kind and thoughtful. And, now we live in a world of, the internet, and people are, trigger, they'll send out a nasty email, or they'll, bully online, or all of those things. And I think that we could really use some love and humanity for each other, especially since we've all been locked up for so long, show some compassion and love. And I think that was part of the Ninja Turtle message. And I really wanted to make sure that would be part of the story. And it's in there. And I think that, Steve Barron was really interested in having that in there as well, because it was such an important part of the movie.
Well, thank you so much for going so in depth about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Again, I will forever know you as April O'Neil, and you have absolutely crushed it throughout your whole acting career. You guys are now listening to Judith Hoag. She is telling you guys all about her amazing acting career, how she's bounced back and forth from LA to New York to Boston, growing up in Newburyport, having twin brothers, and just growing up in the theater world, and just always knowing that she was going to own the stage and own the films. Please stay tuned. She is going to be creating a documentary called The Making of April O'Neil. And I know that you have to jet soon, so I'll wrap this up very soon. Aside from being April O'Neil, of course, you did a number of other projects, including Halloween Town, which obviously I loved that whole film series as a kid. That's a Disney film. You actually played Gwen Piper. Gwen was born as a witch, but moved to the human world after marrying her husband. So if you guys don't know what Halloween Town is, please check that out. Also in 2020, you just recently wrapped The Magicians. You did 5 seasons in that. So that just recently wrapped up, and you played Stephanie Quinn. And you also have 2 new movies coming out in 2021. One is called Finding You, and one is called Roll With It. So can you give us a little bit of backstory on those 2 films, and tell us maybe a little bit about your characters, if you can, for Finding You and Roll With It?
Finding You. So I did a movie called Roll With It. And they came to me and asked me if I would consider doing the film. And I read the script and I thought it was charming, but there really wasn't much of a part. So I declined. And then they very kindly said, well, do you have some thoughts about what could happen with the character? I was like, do I have some thoughts about what could happen? And so I worked with the director, and we wrote some stuff together. And it's the part of Ruby, and I play Bonnie, who is played by Shonda Pierce, who's a very funny stand-up comedian. We were able to create a much more interesting character, and it was so much fun. And one of the producers who was on that film had a friend who had just directed a movie that they had just shot in Ireland, and they had their US work that they needed to do. And so they asked me if I would come in and shoot that. And I played the mom of the lead girl, and it was a lot of fun. I would have given anything to meet Vanessa Redgrave. I think that she's an amazing actress. I don't know exactly when. I think Where You'll Find Me is going to be released, I think, this month. I'm not sure though. And Roll With It, we are still waiting to hear, because it was supposed to be a theatrical release. And of course, the movie theaters are just starting to open. So these were all things that, we're all trying to navigate what life looks like going forward. But they were both really fun parts to play. And it's nice because, this year has been such a crazy year, being on a set and being with my friends. So now I'm ready to go back to work.
Well, we are very excited for all of your upcoming and future projects. To wrap up the show, again, I appreciate you coming on the BosBabes Lifestyle Sports Podcast. You've been such an amazing guest today. Can you give the listeners some positive pop? Like, what is a great positive message to end the show tonight?
I would say use this time wisely. It's a time of things unraveling, like the way that you knew your life is not the way you know your life now. So let that be a clean slate if you can. And I think what most people have gotten from this time is that a deeper understanding of what's really important to them, like what's really important to them, what matters and what doesn't matter. And I would say focusing on the things that matter and then spending more time on those things is really, really important. Even if that means putting down some things that you used to be identified as loving. Like people go, hey, but you used to love to do that. It's like, yeah, but I don't anymore. Now I just kind of want to, go hike in nature, or yeah, actually, I really want to take better care of my body, or I'm learning a new something. And, do follow your bliss. I think Joseph Campbell said it the best. Follow your bliss, do what your heart calls you. If not now, when? I think we've all lost people during this time, so it's really a time to live.
Perfect. That is some excellent positive pop. It is an excellent time to live and follow your bliss. And Judith, I hope you continue to follow your bliss, making great projects and movies and films and TV shows for all of us to watch back home. Again, I just wanted to thank you, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your night.
Thank you, Brittany. You take care.